Hello, everyone. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a really interesting IG Live today. We're actually going to discuss electrons. You may recall hearing electrons in an introductory science course back in grade school. And electrons are particles that carry electric energy charges and are essential for all living cells. So things that we do in our daily lives can impact our electrons negatively or positively. So as a result, then we might experience negative effects on our immune system, DNA communication, adrenal glands, and much more. So this is why today we're really, really excited to be chatting with Carrie Bennett, a clinical nutritionist with a research-backed expertise in hydration, fasting, anti-inflammatory diet, healthy light exposure, and detoxification. So we're going to discuss the role of electrons playing our body's functioning, things that we can do, things they can do to suppress electrons, and then how to increase your magnetism. So, okay. Oh, here you are. Hi, Carrie. How are you?
Hi, Jenna. Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a super, super exciting topic.
I could talk about this all day, so I'm glad you feel the same way.
This is awesome. So tell us a little bit about your background and like how you became an electron expert.
Oh gosh, it didn't start out that way, right? I think like all of us, I was on my own personal health journey. And at the time, I was also working with clients, right? As a personal trainer, massage therapist, clinical nutritionist. And we were all getting better, but something was missing. And that's when I found quantum biology and applied quantum biology and how the body operates at that scale of electrons. And when I started applying things to influence that, that was just the game changer for my health.
Oh, wow. So in your work, what are electrons? I gave like a one sentence description. So I want you to tell the audience about it.
Sure. It's a great place to start, right? Because, I hadn't given them a second thought since like college chemistry. So it's like, okay, here's the deal, right? We're made up of a bunch of cells, and our cells are made up of a bunch of proteins and molecules, and those are all made up of atoms from the periodic table of elements. And each of those atoms is made up of a combination of electrons, protons, and neutrons. And so we're just a ton of electrons basically, because you have the human body has what's called a negative charge. So when you just look at it at that scale, we require so many electrons on a daily basis to function, and modern lifestyles aren't necessarily that great at giving us those electrons back.
Very interesting. I know electrons have a lot to do with mitochondrial cells. And then you also had a great post about electrons and cell mitochondria. So first, okay, let's give like a high level kind of explanation. What is the mitochondria? And then what role does, electron plays in like mitochondria?
Yeah, it's a great place to be. So mitochondria live inside of our cells, and they're called organelles, which I think someone just was really cute in naming the little parts of a cell, right? Because we know that the human body is made up of organs, the liver, the gallbladder, the adrenal glands. But then inside of our cells, we've got these tiny little organs, essentially organelles inside of the cells, and mitochondria are one of those. So they're one type of little organ inside of the cell, and they're not just like one or two of them per cell. There's literally thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of them per cell. And what their job is literally to convert electrons into ATP and water. So that's our cell's operating currency. If we don't have enough ATP and if we don't have enough water, then our cells are just not going to do their thing. And so the ability of the mitochondria to take electrons and make them into ATP and water really determines the health and the energetic state of the cell.
I love it. You're like, one audience just commented that such amazing science communicator, loving it. I felt exactly the same. I was just about to say that comment, and then we see this comment. No, this is awesome. That makes a lot of sense. So then how does like sunlight impact electron production?
Well, there's a lot of different ways we can get electrons. So, one of the things that we don't think about is we think of sunlight as like warming us up and heating us up. But actually, this goes back to Einstein, everyone. So don't freak out when I mention Einstein. And what he won the Nobel Prize for in 1921 was the photoelectric effect, which is a fancy way of saying light, when it strikes certain surfaces, can generate free electrons. And so we just didn't think that, we knew this was happening in certain metals. We just didn't realize this was happening in the human body. So when sunlight strikes the human body, we can actually create free electrons. So it's just one way, but it's specific wavelengths that do that. The UV spectrum in particular is what creates the free electrons. And so unfortunately, living indoors, we just don't get a ton of those UV wavelengths these days. Or we're afraid of them. We just don't know how to use them. We don't know how to go out in the sun safely and all those things. So that's the way that the sun can actually literally generate a free electron currency for the body. And we typically only think of electrons like back in, I'm sure we remember like high school chemistry class, we heard mitochondria. We may have heard of this electron transport chain that I was talking about inside of the mitochondria. And we heard that the only way to get electrons is through food, which is one way, right? All food breaks down into electrons, or it can, especially fats and carbs. Proteins are like the building blocks of our body, right? We break down proteins to the extent that our body then can use those to build new stuff. But carbs become electrons. Fats become electrons. It's such a funny debate you hear, like carbs bad, carbs good, fat bad, fat good. It's like they're all electrons, people. But it's just one way to get electrons. And so it's like that's the way that we've heard about maybe in science class, but we have to recognize that sunlight absolutely is a huge way that we can improve the electron status of our bodies.
Which we're going to talk a little bit later, is how to utilize the sun safely. I know you're also expert in exclusion zone water or easy water. So tell us about that. Like, what is the easy water?
Oh, it's the coolest topic in the world, right? And my kids are like, what does that lady talk about all the time? But so exclusion zone water is the water that lives inside of our bodies. Again, you Google this and you'll hear that the human body is 60 to 70% water, which is true. But it's the type of water that's inside of our bodies is not the water that's like a liquid swirling around in a glass. That water that's in a glass has the chemical formula H2O, right? We can picture that back from science class, H2O. And if I were to look at water in its liquid state in a glass, and I could see these H2O molecules interacting with each other, they would kind of just be sloshing around dancing. I'm going to dance with this person. I'm going to dance with that person. We're going to kind of go all around to different people. And that's not how the water in our body is structured. The water in our body actually organizes the H's and the O's into hexagonal rings around everything, every membrane, every molecule, every protein, every mitochondrion. Everything in the body is surrounded by this really organized water that's been called a lot of different names. It's been called structured water. It's been called interfacial water. It's been called boundary water, bound water. But the term that I really like comes from Dr. Gerald Pollack. He is the researcher who coined the term exclusion zone water. And the reason he called it that was because when this water forms next to all these surfaces, it creates a barrier, an exclusionary barrier. Nothing can penetrate through those hexagonal sheets of H's and O's except electrons, right? And it turns out that that's how one way we funnel electrons through the body is through this water network of our body. I call it our quantum communication superhighway.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And then we know water is so important in our body, not just from regulating temperature, but also like a detoxing and everything else. So like really understand this and how electron can actually impact this structured water it's so important.
It's amazing, right? So one of the kind of catchphrases that we have in the quantum biology world is redox before you detox or redox to detox, which basically means like if I have to build up this exclusion zone water barrier. So if there's metals, if there's chemicals that are kind of lodged in the cell, if I can build up this exclusion zone water inside my cell, I'm creating like this pushing effect almost. I'm pushing stuff out of the cell. Or I'm stopping them from penetrating in and wreaking havoc. And so it's a really fascinating thing to understand how the water in our bodies can do this, certainly from like a sweating and a flushing perspective, but also from that structuring and kind of exclusion zone perspective.
I love it. So what are some tips so we can properly like sun gazing or sunbathing without hurting, injury our eyes or other parts?
Sure, sure. So, like, sun gazing really is a practice that's been around for thousands of years, but we can't necessarily jump into that, right? Our eyes are very used to seeing artificial spectrums. And so, one of the things I encourage everyone to do to kind of get used to seeing sunlight again is to go outside at sunrise and just sky gaze. It doesn't even have to be where the sun, you don't even have to see the sun. But what you're going to notice as soon as you step outside and sky gaze, you're going to notice a shift. There's like a brightness factor. There's almost, you'll find a contraction of your pupils. And what's happening there is your eyes are actually picking up a lot of the different light frequencies that that penetrate through the atmosphere at sunrise. Does a lot of biological things in the body. We don't have to go into that, but that's a great place to start. And then once you're comfortable just sky gazing throughout the day, then at sunrise, if you can physically see the sun come over the horizon, glance towards it, right? Like you don't have to stare right at it. You can glance maybe 15 degrees away from it, and still you're just going to get that intensity of sunlight. And I do have clients who have built up to being able to stare closer and closer to the sun. Nothing I could recommend on Instagram, but it's possible, right? Because it is something that could be done, and that light provides code. It's color, right? It's color code that we just can't separate, but different sensors in our body can, and we need that color code throughout the day.
That makes so much sense because there's a ton of research in areas in the world when they don't have sunlight and people experience depressions and other issues, and then make this sun gazing and then really experiencing the light also super important for our health.
Yeah, that was one of the things. So I used to be, the typical Michigander here, right? We're about this time of year, we have like these sad lights, these big bright light boxes that I would just like blast into my face every morning because I was missing the light. But I didn't realize just because it was gray outside didn't mean that the light wasn't there. Didn't mean that information wasn't there and the effect wasn't there. So as soon as I started just going outside in the morning, my seasonal affective disorder completely went away. Seasonal depression gone, just tons of energy. It's pretty amazing.
Wow. And that's free of charge.
Free of charge. Free and easy. Exactly.
What are some things that could like deplete an electron-rich body?
Everything we're doing these days, Jenna, it's kind of sad, right? So here's the deal, right? Another source of electrons, which I haven't talked about, they're free electrons coming from the surface of the earth, right? We can touch our skin, bare skin, to the surface of the earth, and electrons flow. So it's like we have so many ways if we're outside to kind of make sure our electron status stays strong. My carpet's not going to give me electrons, right? So I'm divorcing myself from those electrons. The glass windows and the light bulbs inside don't have the UV light, right? So I'm not going to get those electrons. And unfortunately, wireless technologies, we now know, depletes exclusion zone water, right? So that also you can consider that like an electron thief, if you will, stealing electrons. Not only from that, but living indoors, we all feel dehydrated, right? We know that feeling of like, especially winter now, like that winter dehydration indoors, we know that. And so what it's doing is it's basically destroying our electron-rich bodies. And we're not just aware that we can go outside and we need to replenish it regularly.
So this is we also call it electromagnetic field, EMF. And then in the past, we talked very briefly about it, like what are electromagnetic field, also known as EMF?
Yeah, so that's just different forms of radiation is what I'm going to call it, right? So it would be really simple, right? To Google electromagnetic spectrum, and you'll see that this is just waves of light. And humans see a tiny, tiny percentage of all the waves of light that are around us. We see the visible light. We see the light that makes up the colors of the rainbow. But that's not the only light that's around us, which you would see, like, because we know there's insects and animals that can see ultraviolet. We know that they can see infrared. So there's tons of light. And some of that light is native light, right? That could be like the lights that I was talking about from the sun, from the infrared, from the earth. Some of that light is now, it's non-native. It's artificially generated. And that's called non-native electromagnetic fields. That comes from things like cell phone towers, cell phones, Bluetooth devices, Wi-Fi routers, smart meters. I mean, there's a lot of sources of this wireless technology, wireless radiation, and all that is artificial light. It's confusing light. And I think these past couple of years, people become more and more aware of artificial light, especially from screen use. And we have to understand that that is also artificial light that can be equally as disruptive to our body. We just can't physically see it.
Which is through like disrupting our electron levels and electron production.
Mm-hmm. And we even know that it disrupts melatonin production. So again, like if I were to tell anyone, oh, if you stare at a brightly lit television screen at night, that's going to kind of hurt your sleep. And people would be like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. But we don't realize that just because we can't see that light, it still has the potential to do that. It can disrupt our sleep as well.
Right. So what are some tips that you can do to improve electron levels?
Oh, such easy ones, right? Touch the earth with bare skin. Touch living trees, bushes, things planted into the ground. Go outside and get your skin into the light, right? The natural light. It doesn't just have to be the UV light. The infrared light actually expands that exclusion zone. So the infrared wavelengths of light, like I was saying, build that exclusion zone fourfold. So if you're depleted inside all day, go outside. Move your body, because our connected tissue will make its own electrons. It's called piezoelectricity, right? So taking movement breaks throughout the day and moving our body gives us electrons. We can drink electron-rich, mineral-rich water. So like natural sources of spring water are considered a very hydrating, electron-rich source of water. And then avoiding the technologies as much as possible. Like, listen, I had my wireless headset. I had my smart tracking devices, and I had it all, right? And then I realized it wasn't serving my health. And so as I got rid of them and as I understood this more, it was like, oh, okay, I can give those up and honor the electron status of my body.
I love it. This is like, wow, such useful information. You have a webinar coming up on December 12th called Taking Advantage of Winter for Better Health. And then what's the program about? Tell us about it.
Yes. Yeah, there's a link in my bio if you're interested in that one. So that one's about how I used to dread winter, kind of like I talked about earlier, and how I realized that winter gives us an opportunity to heal. There's more darkness, there's cold, there's scarcity, and we have infrared sources like, fire. All of those things combine to be this prime healing time. And so I kind of want to help people reframe the idea of, winter is something to dread, to wait, winter, I can still have high quality energy. I don't need seasonal depression. And, oh, by the way, this could be a perfect time for my body to heal. And so that's coming up in a couple of weeks.
Love it. You also have very many unique product recommendations. So how do you go about curating these products?
I try them. I get curious in something and I know my clients are going to want to know a good recommendation. And so I will purchase a heck of a bunch of products and I'll get my meters out and my little testing devices and I'll try it out on family members and friends and myself and clients. And then I finally come to a recommendation. So yeah, I've curated a whole free guide if you want to check out my product recommendations. But that's how I do it, right? I do it like the old school. Let me just buy it and test it.
I love it. I love it. This is very trustworthy because I think we just see so many advertising and you don't even know if it actually works or not. And I love it that you actually use it yourself and on family and having the device testing it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the only way I really feel comfortable recommending something is if I've got concrete, at least my own anecdotal evidence that yes, this is a good quality company with a good quality product.
So tell us a little bit more about your online courses and what can people expect on them.
There are two actually types of courses that I do. One is for the client, right? The client who's yeah, I'm interested in this. I think that this could help me on my healing journey. And I really think it's foundational for people to explore this kind of quantum sunlight and electrons and circadian rhythms. I have a course that's called Quantum Foundations. It's just a self-paced course and you can just literally dive in to all 45 videos, right? Dive into each video and just start to apply this information. And so that's available. It also comes with a weekly Q&A with me because I can't shut up about this stuff, Jenna. I like to talk to people about this stuff. So anyone who wants to join that Q&A can ask those any questions they want. And then for practitioners, because that's a whole nother area, right? Through the Quantum Biology Collective, we offer a certification course for practitioners because those of us who are faculty members of that course, it's taken us literally a decade or more to kind of figure this stuff out and how to apply it. And we want to save practitioners time, energy, money, because this information really needs to get out there sooner than later.
Wow, this makes a lot of sense. First, I really like the live Q&A because I know like behavior change is really hard, especially people diving to, a new topic. So then they can have a little bit hand holding, which will facilitate better changes. And I also love the practitioner one because, yeah, this is the really great information. It needs to be
there's Quantum TV. So if you scroll there, they just gave a high five. If anyone's a practitioner and they're interested, go ahead and go to their profile. That's the organization that's changing the world right there. So
cool. So we have one question just came in. Can you give some methods of healing with sound? Are turning works Tibetan bows necessary, or are there others?
Yeah, sound healing is very subjective. There are certain sounds that have a lot of layers to them. A lot of frequencies actually can be really, really therapeutic because sound does a couple of things in the body. So I'm taking a sound course with a sound researcher who researches the interaction with sound and water, of course, right? And what he's found is that sound can actually build exclusion zone water. So that's another way that you can build that exclusion zone water, good quality healing sounds. And sound also can restructure water around proteins. So picture a receptor on a membrane, and it's supposed to be like this perfect shape in order to receive the message, the frequency, or the docking, however you want to look at it. And if it's shaped like this, it's not going to get the message. So sound it's called sonoacoustics research. It could actually help to restructure those membrane receptors so that they can all of a sudden become active again. They can do their thing again. So Tibetan bowls can be great. There's ancient instruments and sounds of nature are the way to go. The more ancient healing sounds are definitely ones that have been around for a reason. The gong, believe it or not, the cistern, all of those, the harp, those have a really beneficial healing quality to them due to all of the frequencies of sound that they contain.
Yeah, I felt like I've seen some research. Some researchers were showing how the eyes are formed by playing different music to them. And how, like, as you said, the more like a nature type of healing music actually formed a like much more beautiful, like a crystal structure than just any kind of music. Yeah. That's super, super cool.
It's super cool because what happens is that the water in our body is actually it's a receiver, right? It's an antenna for all frequencies. And so if you provide it with the right frequencies, it's going to do the right task, right? It's going to be thriving and healing. The wrong frequencies, whether it's sound, light, non-native EMFs, that's where you can really start to get challenges. It's all that water network in the body.
So I know we didn't really cover this. I'm just curious that, how do you determine your own frequency to figure out, what's good for you? Because I know we obviously need to individualize everything. So what I've started to ask all of my clients to do is to get rid of their tracking devices and listen to their bodies. It was such a fascinating kind of 5 years to go through where I would ask someone how they slept and they'd be like, let me get my app, and it's like, no, how did you sleep? And so I really ask people to kind of sit with their bodies and their intuition. And the more we are in tune with nature, the more we're in tune with those frequencies, less of the noise, the static, and more of the signal, the stronger our intuition will be for what the body needs to heal. I love this. So thank you so much, Carrie, for joining us. This is such wonderful information, and we have such great turnout. So everyone, please make sure you follow Carrie and Carrie B Wellness, because this is like such great information, and practically you can literally start practicing the strategies that Carrie just mentioned.
Go outside right now.
Yeah, go outside right now. Like, that's light. It's like morning.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Jenna, thank you so much. I loved chatting with you. This was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Bye.
Take care. Bye.